From the Republic Media Network headquarters, it's time for Arnab Goswami on The Debate. Arnab Goswami on The Debate.
Good evening and welcome. Sorry for the slightly late start. Prime Minister Narendra Modi, through his maiden bilateral visit to Russia in his third term, has made a global statement on his mettle. Within 24 hours of the Prime Minister's visit, the United States and the West have come around, and the White House today has said that India's relationship with Russia can help end the war with Russia. So imagine how things have changed. 2 days back, they said our eyes are peeled at what India does in Moscow, and now they are saying India has the ability to change things on Ukraine. Ladies and gentlemen, India has always maintained an independent foreign policy. The Prime Minister has underscored nation first as his approach through his visit to Russia. From fuels to fertilizers and deeper economic cooperation. For Prime Minister Modi, it's ultimately about India, nation first, and its engagement with its partners. Even in Austria today, the Prime Minister has reiterated his call for peace. And it is because when India engages with you, it is not with the intent to preach, but the intent to bridge the gap. And in the bargain, if Prime Minister Modi has prevailed even a wee bit on President Vladimir Putin in terms of restraining him on the Ukraine war, getting him to agree to look at a peaceful solution, then the world should acknowledge him rather than hold a grudge against India. Because to quote the Prime Minister, bombs, guns, bullets do not lead to successful negotiations. You need dialogue for that. And that is the role that India has chosen, not of a hegemon or of a preacher, but that of a friend to the entire world. And perhaps the world is coming around, but naysayers continue to question India's increasing global importance in the new emerging global world order. To them I say, if you are betting against India, you are destined to lose. We have interesting debates tonight, ladies and gentlemen. The global spotlight is on Prime Minister Narendra Modi. And interestingly, very interestingly, the kind of conversation we have right now is about the role Prime Minister Modi can play in the Ukraine situation. We have at 8:30 p.m. tonight, 8:30 p.m. tonight, interesting conversation on how the growth in employment figures is getting better. It's really gone up. But despite that, there are dismal job forecasts from India, from groups like Citi. Ladies and gentlemen, we need to be real. If there is growth, then growth in jobs will follow. We question the cynics tonight, and debate number 3 this evening, viewers, at 9 o'clock this evening, we have very interesting observation from the Supreme Court, which has passed a massive alimony order for Muslim women. Ladies and gentlemen, let's not get confounded into what numbers the BJP got. You need a uniform civil code. We need the uniform civil code. The Supreme Court is talking in that direction as well. We're debating that at 9 o'clock, and here are the headlines this Wednesday evening on The Debate Tonight. After having a meltdown, the United States has now said that the Prime Minister Narendra Modi could play the role of mediator in the Russia-Ukraine war. Global eyes are now on the Prime Minister. The Prime Minister is in Vienna now after wrapping up his Moscow leg. It's a packed agenda for him with mega bilaterals. Austria's federal chancellor lauds the Prime Minister, says India has a crucial role to play in the Russia-Ukraine war ending. In a historic verdict, the Supreme Court has ruled that Muslim women are entitled to maintenance after divorce. The top court has said it's not charity but a right. Secular laws are taking precedence over religious rules. And Mihir Shah, the 24-year-old killer of Kaveri, has been sent to a 6-day police custody. His father has been sacked from the Eknath Shinde's party's top post. Source are informing Republic that Rajesh Shah of the Eknath Shinde Shiv Sena planned his son's escape after the cold-blooded murder. And ladies and gentlemen, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's visit to Russia has made global headlines, and the statesmanship of the Prime Minister has once again put at display the strategic importance of India in the new world order. From quote-unquote closely monitoring the visit of Narendra Modi to Moscow to coming around now and saying that India can utilize its historic ties to bring Vladimir Putin on the negotiating table to end the war on Ukraine, Washington in the last 24 hours has done a complete U-turn. Let's debate.
यह युद्ध का समय नहीं है। समस्याओं का समाधान रणभूमि में नहीं हो सकता।
Prime Minister's policy of peace and diplomacy is making global headlines. It was a top agenda at the Kremlin.
संघर्ष हो, आतंकवादी हमले हो, मानवता में विश्वास करने वाला हर व्यक्ति जब जानहानि होती है तब बहुत पीड़ित होता है, लेकिन उसमें भी जब मासूम बच्चों की कत्ल होती है, मासूम बच्चों को मरते हुए देखते हैं, तब हृदय छलनी हो जाता है और वो दर्द बहुत भयानक होता है। एक्सेलेंसी, एक मित्र के नाते मैंने हमेशा कहा है कि हमारी भावी पीढ़ी के उज्जवल भविष्य के लिए शांति सर्वाधिक आवश्यक है, लेकिन मैं ये भी जानता हूं कि युद्ध के मैदान में समाधान संभव नहीं होते हैं। बम, बंदूक और गोलियों के बीच समाधान और शांति वार्ताएं सफल नहीं होती हैं और हमने वार्ता के माध्यम से ही शांति के रास्ते अपनाने होंगे।
Global eyes are now on the Prime Minister.
India is an important and influential and creditworthy country. India is the biggest democracy in the world, and therefore India's role, especially for Austria, is more than important when it comes to the peace process and future peace summits.
The very West that was having a meltdown until a few hours ago.
We would urge India, as we do any country when it engages with Russia, to make clear that any resolution to the conflict in Ukraine needs to be one that respects the UN Charter, that respects Ukraine's territorial integrity, Ukraine's sovereignty, and India is a strategic partner with whom we engage in a full and frank dialogue, and that includes on our concerns about the relationship with Russia.
Has now taken a U-turn.
India is a strategic partner with whom we engage in full and frank dialogue, including their relationship with Russia. And we've talked about this before. So we think it's critical that all countries, including India, support efforts to realize an enduring and just peace when it comes to Ukraine. It is important for all our allies to realize this. And so we also believe India's long-standing relationship with Russia gives it the ability to urge the President Putin, to end his brutal war, an unprovoked war.
With sanctions failing to make any dent, even the West has now thrown its weight behind the Prime Minister. Can the Modi factor mediate in the Russia-Ukraine war?
Okay, we have Sushant Sareen, Senior Fellow at the Observer Research Foundation and well-known strategic affairs voice, Tatiana Kokareva, senior journalist from Moscow, and Peter Kuznick, professor and director at the Nuclear Studies Institute at the American University. And my first question, Peter, is to you, that we saw a change in tone. By the way, this visit was very, very closely followed, not just in Russia and Russia Today and all the RT outlets, but also very closely across the Indian media and around the world. Now, Peter, yesterday it was a different tone from America. Today it's a different tone. Day before yesterday was a different tone, slightly threatening tone to start with. Then, oh, let's all work together tone. And now the latest tone from the White House is a conciliatory tone, which says India is an important country and India's relationship, long-standing historic relationship with Russia, gives it a vantage point to help end the war. So it's a change in tone. How do you read this?
I think there's a lot of confusion right now in the United States. We've got the Biden presidency teetering at the moment. After Biden's disastrous debate performance, all the discussion in the American media now is not about Modi's visit to Moscow. It's not about the NATO summit taking place right here in Washington, D.C. It's whether or not the Biden candidacy can survive. And so the United States right now is in a very confused position. But the NATO meeting here is really a massive war conference. What they're talking about is how to provide more arms to Ukraine, how to provide more advanced weapon systems, more financial aid. They're not talking about how to find a path to peace through diplomacy. So what Modi's doing is extremely important now on the global stage, because he's showing that Putin is not isolated, that the U.S. strategy of defeating Russia, inflicting a devastating blow against Russia in Ukraine is not going to work. And so the question is, are we going to continue this fighting for another year, have more and more children being killed, more Russians, more wealth being wasted, or are we going to find a path to peace? The fact that Modi is speaking out in similar terms to Xi Jinping, to Lula, to other global leaders, to the global South, is a very positive development. And it's not surprising, because Modi has refused all along to be drawn into the U.S. effort to use this to weaken Russia. And so what's happening is very positive, and the U.S. confusion just shows that the United States right now is in a very shaky position, because the question of leadership is one that is not yet determined. So
what you're saying, Peter, if I understand you correctly, that given the current confusion in the United States, Prime Minister Narendra Modi's decision to go to Russia, engage in these talks, now he's in Vienna and engage in discussion on all sides, makes his role quite significant. In fact, given the prevailing confusion in the US, where you're seeing a war effort intensify at the NATO conference, what Prime Minister Modi is doing is quite remarkable, in fact.
Prime Minister Modi's role is crucial right now, and he's got to join the efforts and propel the efforts of other leaders around the world who also see the insanity of this war continuing. Where are we going to be a year from now? Hundreds of thousands more dead, Russia with controlling more of Ukraine than it does now, and diplomacy again being ignored globally. So Modi is a voice for peace right now, and a voice for diplomacy, and a voice for reason, and that's what we need.
Tatiana, just going across to you, your response on 2 points. This may not have been the intent alone of Prime Minister Modi's visit, but we've seen this highlighted by a number of global experts, that the visit shows that Russia is not isolated. The visit shows that Russia is doing business with big players across the world, that it's not just talking to China or to North Korea. The level of engagement is only going to increase with all relevant powers within Asia and outside. How do you view America's response? In your view, is it a sign of the confusion in Washington that the State Department doesn't know what White House says? Or is it more than that, today's statement?
I have to actually agree with Peter on one thing. I wouldn't call this confusion per se. You know, Arnab, I think that the functioning, the ruling administration is going to do literally anything to drag the attention from the condition of Joe Biden. You know, we have CNN putting it on the front page, reports on whether he's receiving treatments for Alzheimer's. And that says a lot. You know, this is a sitting president. This is an incumbent president. This is a huge problem for the Democratic administration, and they need to still nominate a presidential candidate, as you know it. You know, he's still not the candidate for the party. The conference is still a month away.
Yes, it can change.
So this is a huge thing. But also, let's not forget that at the same time, literally almost the same time as the White House says, you know, let's keep an eye, and Mr. Modi has to remember that there has to be effort for peace. At the same time, Joe Biden promises more air defense missiles to Ukraine. And then the Ukrainian president just a couple of days ago said that, you know, they have a framework agreement with Poland, that Poland is kind of allowed to shoot down missiles over Ukraine. It doesn't work this way. I mean, you can't call for peace and also, again, you know, when the White House says, you know, we need a lasting peace, it means peace on American conditions. And when they say that India needs to understand it, that means India needs to understand the way America understands it.
Yeah, I get what you're saying, Tatiana, but you know, is the American war industry, which is digging in its heels, Sushant. And you've got a weak president. You've got a lame duck president. I'm interested to know here, because if you've seen the personal dynamics, and Sushant, personal dynamics do play a role when it comes down to individuals. I do not know of any major leader of any other major power in the world besides Narendra Modi who represents a country with the significance and individually holds the stature and significance that Narendra Modi now does globally. You're aware of the personal equation between him and Donald Trump and between him and Vladimir Putin. I cannot think of a second person globally. Can you, Sushant? And therefore, how do you see things playing out, even after the American results?
So, Arnab, I tend to agree with you simply because I don't know of which other leader in the world can actually sit across Mr. Putin and as a friend, counsel that we need to get out of this war. But the war is not just in the hands of Mr. Putin. I think the other side just has to reciprocate. Both sides have to be interested in peace. I think what the Indian approach has been that, look, until and unless you're going to start if you're going to be fueling the war, then you're not going to be able to end it. If you're going to ostracize, isolate, sanction Russia, it hasn't gotten you very far. The Indian approach has been that, okay, fine, and that's what my takeaway was, that he has counseled that there needs to be some kind of a pause, some kind of a ceasefire so that the two sides can get together, some kind of a dialogue can start. Now, that's the only way forward. Otherwise, as Peter was saying, you will have another year of more bloodshed, of greater casualties, all kinds of things happening. And is that the way people want to go? Now, India looks at this war as not being in India's interest. It's not in the world's interest, and it is not even in Russia's interest. So we would like that this war comes to an end as soon as possible. And that is what we are making a plug for. But it's not just about the confusion in the American administration or the defense industry in the US, which is fueling this war. I think in the West, over the last 70 odd years, there is a kind of unique kind of indoctrination which has taken place, which portrays Russia as some kind of an ogre. And these guys simply don't understand that your real challenge is not from Russia. Russia is a potential ally. Your real challenge is from the Chinese. And by pushing the Russians even deeper into the arms of the Chinese, into the embrace of the Chinese, you're not really helping your cause. Now, just as India, for example, needs Russia to balance China, Russia looks at India also to balance China. That is something that the West should welcome. They should not be taking pot shots at us because we have a close relationship with Russia. In fact, they should use it, they should welcome it, they should encourage it, because this is something which will stand them in good stead going forward. So it's and the problem is and you know, I can tell you, if you go to Europe, for example, or you talk to American strategists, they somehow are so fixated on Russia rather than where they should actually be fixated on. And it is that which is actually, you know, driving this conflict. And then the Godi media in Russia, this lapdog media, which simply, you know, swallows and vomits whatever is given to them by the deep states. It's crazy, because can't they see how the chessboard is the global chessboard is placed? Can't they see what it is all about? One doesn't really have to endorse the war, and India hasn't endorsed Russia's war. In fact, we've always found that this war should not have happened, but the war is happening. And what we would like is that this war should come to an end as soon as possible. But for that, both sides have to be ready.
No, I think this. I'm not saying this. I'm not saying this as an Indian journalist. I'm just giving you my take on it, because I actually want to bounce this off Edward Joseph, who is joining us from Johns Hopkins University in Washington. Professor Joseph, I found it quite remarkable when the Indian Prime Minister sat across the table. I'm sure it was not as noticed because, of the ongoing obsession with the American elections, but otherwise the global event, it was very significant, I thought, when Prime Minister Narendra Modi sat across the table day before yesterday, in fact, with Vladimir Putin, and he said to him that, Mr. Putin, I believe there can be no peace on the battlefield, and that solutions to the war can only be found from dialogue. And then he went on to say that India feels the pain, especially when children are killed. We feel pained at this. It is heartbreaking to see innocent children being killed. And he has said that I am looking forward to talking about these things with Vladimir Putin. And this has been followed up by, in Austria, a joint statement from the Austrians and the Indian government saying that we look forward to resolving the situation in Ukraine. So I'm looking at this as a contrast to what's happening with NATO. Am I reading it right, Dr. Joseph? On the one side, the NATO war machine is getting busy to put more into the war. And on the other side, a very significant but solitary effort from the Prime Minister to discuss possibilities of sitting and talking this out. Dr. Joseph, how do you see this?
Okay, well, first, thank you very much for this opportunity to provide a clarifying, let me use that term, clarifying and truth-based counterpoint to the views, at least from what I've heard from one of your guests in the short time I've been here. And I can speak to you and I can answer this from a personal experience in a very clear way from here in Washington during this 75th anniversary NATO summit, because I was personally present last night at a summit-related event when it was not an American official. And so here, let's immediately take on the propaganda view here that has been expressed by at least one of your guests. It was the leading European Union official for foreign policy. That is Josep Borrell. He is their High Commissioner for Foreign and Security Policy. He is basically the foreign minister of the European Union. I was physically present for his speech last night, where we have to remember this is the European Union. The European Union could be a competing organization to NATO. The European Union could be the organization that says, look, we don't want to be dominated by these Americans. We want to have our own independent strategic autonomy. And I am here to tell you and all of your viewers, in contrast to the misleading perspective you've heard from others, that Mr. Borrell, in the name of the European Union, the most prosperous union in the world of international, multinational states, expressed 100% solidarity with NATO, 100% solidarity with Ukraine, who Mr. Borrell, in the name of the European Union, again, this is in Washington, but in the name of the European Union. So let's dismiss all of the nonsense about, oh, this is American war machine and all of this nonsense. This is Mr. Borrell speaking in the name of France, Germany, the Baltic states, Spain, all of these countries expressed clear support for Ukraine and dismissed completely this nonsense that the way to get to peace is by, oh, we cannot, we have to only have dialogue, and this nonsense that the way to get to peace is to somehow bend and capitulate. And he said the contrast. I'm repeating again, not an American official. This is the leading European Union official on foreign policy, restated the threat that Russian aggression poses to Europe. So I say to all of your viewers, this is nonsense. There's perspectives that you're getting, that the European Union is independently, in its own name, 100% aligned with NATO, with the United States. I heard this personally last night. No one can say any different. This is official from the most authoritative level, warning about the dangers of accepting some kind of fake peace. This was Mr. Borrell alluding to
why
this,
would you
about a fake peace that we would get to peace in any other way than showing staunch military support for Ukraine. And everyone knows, none of your viewers, and you, sir, of course, are not naive. Everyone knows the way to peace is not by knuckling under and saying, oh, we can't send more weapons because that's a war machine. Everyone knows, and Mr. Borrell said this, this is not some war machine. The war machine is in Russia, and Mr. Borrell, in the name of the EU, again, in Washington, made it clear this is Russian aggression that is a threat to European security.
Dr. Joseph.
And made it clear that the European, let me finish because you give all your other guests plenty of time. So it made it clear that the only way to get to peace is not by this fake dialogue, but it is to make it clear to Vladimir Putin, who is a dictator, and of course this individual on your screen is unable to say anything in contrast to what Putin would want, but the only way to peace is by continuing to provide
Dr. Joseph,
Ukraine
may I?
The weapons it needs to defend itself against Russian aggression. And then second,
may I intervene and ask a follow-up to you?
Because I joined the program, but let me come to Mr. Modi. Let me tell you this, and without all respect to Prime Minister Modi, let's come to this very quickly. First of all, you missed the much more important quote, which was from Prime Minister Modi when he told President Putin in very clear terms, this is not an era for war. That was the most significant remark that Prime Minister Modi, but that's the one to note. And second, I can tell you, unfortunately, no one is paying attention to this visit of Prime Minister Modi in Russia here. It is 100% overshadowed by the 100% solidarity here. You hear no dissension here in Washington, none. In an alliance of 32 different countries, these are sovereign states. These are not twizzling states like Belarus. These are sovereign states that come here, including Hungary, which is friendly to Russia, all
Dr.
coming
Joseph,
here
may I now,
and showing alignment against
all
Russia
states,
with the United States
all states,
and for NATO. Thank you very much.
Dr. Joseph, I heard you entirely. It would only be fair if I allow an intervention on the other side, but the two things I would like to say that I think, this is wrong to define some states as states, others as rentier states, others as quizzling states. All sovereign states are sovereign states.
State.
As all sovereign states are sovereign states. To your very strong assertion on the program that we must have a continued use of weapons and commitment to the war effort, whatever reason, I would like to just, if you allow me, Dr. Joseph, I'll say just one line in response to you, sir. That did not help America in Afghanistan. That did not help America in Vietnam.
This is completely different.
Every time a new justification is provided.
Completely different situation. These are Ukrainians defending and sacrificing themselves. These are Ukrainians trying to express their own sovereignty.
The only thing different is, sir, allow me, sir, the way I would look at it, that the only thing different is that these are people you see as part of the European/Western world.
That's not true.
Unlike Afghanistan and Vietnam.
That's a false and provocative statement. That's not true.
Okay, may I get a response to what you said?
Ukrainian citizens putting their lives on the line, sacrificing their lives for their independence and sovereignty.
I have limited time. Dr. Joseph,
and not to have anything to do with
I must say I'm rather enjoying this, this discussion. As a debater, I'm tempted to take it further. I have limited time, so I must give a chance to the view from Tatiana, who patiently has heard you out, and your very strong views. Tatiana, briefly, please, and then we'll...
My views were conveying the European Union's perspective, so kindly she should address the perspectives of Mr. Borrell.
Fuck up, you idiot! Let somebody else talk. Shut up!
No, come on. This is funny, though. Come on. This is very amusing. Look, unfortunately, I have to agree with you on one thing that nobody in Washington,
everyone
had plenty of time
in Washington is paying attention to the NATO summit.
But that could be applied to you all. You all have had plenty of time.
Is whether Joe Biden falls off the stage.
Arnab, you have to shut him up.
That is Dr. Peter Kuznick from American University who was responding to you, sir.
Nothing humorous about this. So, and I conveyed the points of Mr. Borrell. So you don't need to
I heard your point.
Dr.
Dr. Joseph, I'd just like you to hear Tatiana's. As a democratic exercise, we hear everyone in terms of equal opportunities. And it's fair we do that, please. Thank you. Please.
Some countries, as you know, Arnab, are more equal than others. And we see a very, very clear example of that right here. But you're really, really completely right. The only reason why the US, and this is just a beautiful example of how, by calling, let's quote unquote, some people on the panel propaganda, you completely dismiss everything that they're saying, because by definition, that is something that is imposed on them. And I could show you the room. There's no person with an AK-47 standing here. Nobody's forcing me to say what I'm saying. There is no red phone. There's nothing. I'm sitting here in my apartment in Moscow, and I'm saying the things that I actually believe in. I grew up in Crimea. I grew up in the part of what you call annexed Ukrainian region. Nobody in my building, nobody in the city that I grew up in. I'm a Muscovite, but we have an apartment there. We used to go there every year. Nobody spoke Ukrainian. I didn't know a single person who knew Ukrainian. And then they were forced to learn it. They were treated terribly by people coming over from Kiev. And I know firsthand that feeling of a second-rate citizen that they had to live with. So you can tell me that, President Putin, who is, whatever you call him, I call him president. I respect the choice of my citizens, the people who live next to me. I voted for him. I actually did vote. He's not telling me what to say. I speak to you from my personal experience. The day Crimea rejoined Russia was the proudest day of my life because I knew the pain the Crimeans went through for years. And if you want to find out about Ukraine, why don't you watch BBC documentaries from 2014 about right sector, executing people, about people driving tanks over civilians because they didn't want to agree with what was happening in Kiev? Why don't you watch them? You don't believe Russian media.
Okay.
So watch the British ones.
Tatiana, only because
of one... I was just in Ukraine. She asked me a question, so I'm answering. I was just in Ukraine. I was just in Kherson. So I've been in Ukraine, and I saw what Russia has done to Kherson. And I know how vulnerable Russia is and Crimea is should Ukraine succeed in crossing the Dnipro River and controlling the water access to Crimea, and then you'll be singing a different tune. And it is not that you have an AK-47 pointed at you. It is that if you dare to challenge and say something different from what the Kremlin wants, and everyone knows this, and all your viewers know this in India, because people in India are very well informed and very sophisticated. They know you will end up in jail. So that is the point. It's not that someone has an AK-47. That's ridiculous. Misleading tactic. It's that if you speak against your president, you will find yourself very quickly arrested in jail. And you know that that's the case.
Dr. Joseph.
Your viewers and this very sophisticated presenter also knows that that's the truth.
Dr. Joseph, Dr. Peter Kuznick, Tatiana Kukareva, and Sushant Sareen. I've totally overshot the time limit. May I be permitted one line at the end? Just to wrap up, I do believe, we all believe here in India, we have an interest in peace. We all believe that this will require a multilateral effort. And I think we need to start working towards a multilateral effort, and countries like India should be playing their role in that, instead of being forced to take this side or the other. I thank you very much. I've listened on very keenly, and I respect you all for your very, very divergent views. Thank you very much.